Well, good afternoon, and thank you. It is a pleasure to join you in a conversation around Black business opportunities with this awesome group of panelists, Secretary Michelle Saunders, Department of Commerce for North Carolina, Mr. Ron Busby, CEO with the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., and Mr. Walter Davis, founding member and partner of Peachtree Providence Partners Holding Company. Thank you and welcome. And welcome to all the participants that are joining us, attendees that are joining us today as well. We're delighted to have a vibrant, fluid conversation. And I like to just start with giving some context. We are at a point, and this is a moment in time to seize reclaiming our legacy by closing the wealth gap for African-American families and communities, and Black businesses and entrepreneurship is a distinct path to forge through being the change, but we must be bold and brave to seize the opportunities where others see risk. The McKinsey, and there's been a lot of data lately, but McKinsey has done a report recently that says the cost for the U.S. economy of not, engaging fully and leveraging and facilitating growth is about $1.5 trillion a year in lost economic value. That's significant. So this is not just about impacting the African-American communities in facilitating the growth of Black businesses. This is about impacting the gross domestic product for everyone gets to benefit. It's indicated that if we don't do this, in the next decade, we will continue to be at 1/10 of the wealth of white families, African-American families, literally being at best 1/10 of the wealth. So if we cannot immediately, and we can't do this overnight because we're talking about a process that has gone on for hundreds of years at this point, what we are wanting to do is to launch and accelerate to close that gap. And how we do that through Black businesses and entrepreneurship will be one path that will be important. So I'd like to start because we have three different perspectives or lens. And as a state government executive over commerce with a strong corporate background from Secretary Michelle Saunders, and a national organizational leader of businesses across the country as well, and with Mr. Ron Busby, and then a private equity partner facilitating business strategy and growth. Really get into where that private money is and how that can be leveraged, and then allowing us to figure that, have strategies to do that. From your perspective and from your lens of the platform that you're sitting on, my first question is, what is the most critical issue for Black businesses in being the change that we would like to see? Now, we already know when the timing is now. We already know why, history of racial inequities, but we want to focus on first the what and really spend time talking about the how. So I'll start with you, Secretary Saunders, in addressing the question from your lens. What's the most critical issue that you see for Black businesses being the change that we can be? Because this topic is about being that change and finding opportunities where others see risk.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here to those who are providing this excellent business forum today, Black Business Forum. I see a few things. One, you mentioned that $1.5 trillion economic value. And I believe that it is important for us to take that data point and to extrapolate in our conversations and what we do and how we do things, exactly what that means, not only to the Black community and Black businesses, but what it means to our state and our nation as a whole. And I think sometimes bringing that data down to a point where people actually can connect and show them, and many probably feeling it, who are not only those small businesses and Black-owned businesses, but other businesses as well. I think when people understand and we can point to where it has an impact on their bottom line, on their livelihood, on their family's livelihoods, and their children and children's children, I believe we can touch the hearts and minds of even more people to help contribute to the work that we're doing. I also believe that if we work to build greater capacity and bandwidth among our Black business community and supporting each other in that we can also make a difference. You know, for example, we talk about the access to funding and grants. And so if we're offering those funding and grants, helping with grant writing, for example, or offering resources that can help the businesses better increase their likelihood for receiving these grants, I believe will help. So I think a lot of it is in the messaging and also in the voices that we are here today lifting, and will lift beyond this meeting to help people understand what it really means to the bottom line and to them and their communities, as well as identifying what capacity we can continue to build and strengthen that is going to open doors for our Black business community, hopefully to greater access and opportunity.
So just as a follow-on to that, and particularly given your platform as a part of a state government agency, how do we help connect the dots with the data to policy, and that people understand the impact of policy on their lives?
Yes, I believe that it is, you know, a responsibility of all of us to pay additional and extra attention to what's going on in every state legislature and in this nation. And then to have those who do have a deeper understanding to be able to communicate that. You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that gives me an opportunity to a captive audience to say, power is in our vote. And we need to do our homework and research on the officials who are running for elected office, especially in the legislature, and understand not only what their track record is, what's their belief system. Where do they think that small businesses, Black business and women-owned businesses, that what do they think about the values? And to use our power and leverage our power of the vote to elect officials who have a demonstrated track record of supporting the needs of the Black business community. And for sure, there is a track record. So that's not too hard to find in today's world, right? So first of all, let's use something that we all have that we shouldn't take for granted. I want to say it's a simple thing to do, but we all know sometimes simple things don't just happen.
Right.
Use the power to vote. And then secondly, you know, within commerce, one of our priorities going forward that has been identified by the team and I under, you know, with this term, is to be more active in the public policy space. And not only in the policy space to advance a business-friendly environment and to advance policies that are going to be supportive of businesses, specifically Black businesses, but there are building blocks too that we need to support, like infrastructure funding, education, healthcare. Those building blocks are essential to our economy and specifically essential to Black businesses. And Gloria, we just came through a time where we can see, I mean, from the pandemic, just how critical it is to have healthy workers, healthy business owners in our workplace. So why wouldn't we work to access increased access for healthcare for all, for example? So I mentioned that because with reference to policy, vote is important and understanding who and what we're voting for. And then secondly, let's not just advocate for those on the surface, when we talk about economic growth and tax credits and all that, let's advocate and support policies that ensure a healthy economy, education, infrastructure, healthcare, and other things that I see from Governor Cooper being a strong advocate for over his last term and this term too.
Thank you. So that was a very strong perspective sitting from your seat so that folks can really understand and make the connection. I'll turn to Ron, who I'm kind of similar, I guess, in some ways, from the perspective of those who are sitting in the seats as Black businesses. And so, Mr. Busby, what would be your most critical issue as you look at all of the Black businesses that are part of the various chambers across the country and being that change that we would like to see?
Well, thank you so much for having us this afternoon. And again, we do represent 149 chambers across the country located in 42 states with a membership base of over 385,000 Black-owned businesses. We're based on 5 pillars, which all I think will be important in today's conversation. And the first one being policy or advocacy. But understand that there is a tremendous difference between just creating policy without having people there to hold it accountable. And a great example of that is the payroll protection plan that we just saw last year come out. A great program if you ask elected officials. But if you look at business owners, particularly Black-owned businesses, we will say that that was one of the worst programs created to help save us. When you create a program that is there to save the employee versus the employer. And for Black-owned businesses, we own and operate 2.6 million businesses across the country, but 2.5 million have no employees. And so when the payroll protection program was created, and we had Black people go there to advocate and to policy to say, this doesn't work for us. You've got to have good people that are sitting in those seats that are there that are going to hold those elected officials accountable. But if you ask any business owner, their number one concern, they will say access to capital. But when you ask a Black business owner, their number one, number two, as well as number three concern, they will say access to affordable and available capital. We know that we pay twice the rate for the capital and only receive 40% of the funds that normal traditional banks will allow us to have. And so I want to make sure that when we're going forward and we're talking about good policy, that we're intentional. Too often we let people outside of our communities paint this broad brush of what Black businesses and Black communities need. And so often it comes under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion or minority programs. And understand, we ain't minorities. We're not a diverse community. We are Black and we have specific needs as well as specific challenges. And when minority programs are created to solve our problems with our communities, it's white women that benefit. And so what we have to do is to take away all the veil, take away all of the nonsense about minority programs and be intentional about making sure that Black-owned businesses have an opportunity to participate. That's why it was so wonderful to hear President Biden go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and make the commitment that the federal government was going to increase its spend with Black-owned firms from 5% to 15%. If we can do that both with the public sector as well as the private sector, now you have an opportunity to move an economic agenda forward for Black businesses. But let me put a very big comma there, because in today's environment, I could be a Black business owner and now be classified as a minority business owner. And so for many government agencies as well as private sector, we saw last year $66 billion commitment made by the private sector that said, hey, we want to make sure that we give back to Black businesses and Black communities. We've only seen $250 million actually be accounted for in reference to that $66 billion commitment. The U.S. Black Chambers is one of the only organization right now that is certifying Black-owned businesses. So often we go to corporate America and say, hey, increase your spend with Black firms. And the answer is, and you know that as well as I do, well, we'd love to, but we either can't find them or they don't have the size and the scale. And we say, take away that foolishness. We have Black businesses in every single industry with every single size, capability, as well as the opportunity to compete. So what the U.S. Black Chamber has done is created our own certification. I'm not interested in what your revenue is or what your profit and loss statement is. I'm concerned is, are you Black? And if you can prove that you're 51% owned by a Black person, you can be certified as a Black-owned business. Taking away the barriers and obstacles that we have faced over the years, falling up under someone else's programs is going to be the first step to make sure that we know who we are and that we can now start to say, when we want to find Black-owned businesses, we know where they are. And if it means that we have to do things such as mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures, and even consortiums, we've got to make sure that we're collaborating with other Black-owned businesses to take advantage of where we are in this period of time. Last year, we had a trifecta of impact on Black communities. First, it was the virus, and we lost a large number of Black people unnecessarily. Many of them called essential workers that now can't go back and get their job. The second one was the stimulus package or the lack thereof. 76% of Black-owned businesses said they either got no funding or they got far less than what they needed. And then the third leg of that trifecta was the murder of George Floyd. Now is our moment in time. We can no longer be under the umbrella of, I'm not Black, I'm minority. This is our opportunity to say, you know what? We are going to be unapologetic about who we are. We are going to stand on the shoulders of individuals that came behind us, and we are going to pave a way for the future in front of us.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
I know you were going to move on, but you know, in response to Mr. Busby's comments, which reminded me that, you know, during the pandemic or some, you know, early on or midstream, and that was while I was Secretary of the Department of Administration. Thank you to the HUB team, Tammy Hall and her team's leadership, in partnership with some others. We realized we already knew it. I mean, let's face it and have real talk here. We don't really need data, any more data, to understand what's going on with Black businesses, just like it didn't take George Floyd's killing for us to know what that was about. But we did a survey, and we recognized the impact of Black businesses. We all know that Blacks, Latinx, and Native Americans were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And we also realized that, as you mentioned, the PPP program and other programs were not meeting the needs of those who were disproportionately impacted in those businesses. So we launched Retool NC. And Retool NC, thank you for the governor's leadership and his will to support and put forward a program like this, was intentional, and it was truly created and designed. And Tammy worked very hard with others on creating that criteria at NC Pro to meet the needs of those who were not getting these loans. And we know and we understand that in most cases, in many cases, these systems, these programs are designed to get the outcomes that we see. It's not by chance, and it's, I don't believe in many instances, it's unintentional. So we intentionally created a Retool NC, a program that met the needs of those who were most disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So Mr. Busby, thank you so much for mentioning that intentionality and how we can do that and be strong leaders in doing that work, because we have seen the results and the response and a positive outcome from that program. And I'm hoping that many others will come about with intentionality when it comes to our American Rescue Plan, and that too will actually be intentional in who it reaches out to. So I just wanted to mention that as an example of something that has taken place and has been a success here in North Carolina. And I also wanted to acknowledge Governor Cooper for that support and leadership in doing that, because programs and things work like that. It does take leadership support to make that happen.
Well, you are absolutely speaking to a couple of things. Again, I had mentioned earlier the connection, the absolute connection between policy and the impact on people's lives. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the right people in the right place for the right tools or implementation, it just won't hurt. It'll miss everyone that you intend. So intentionality is important. And I say to you as well, Mr. Busby, you're right on point that we must be unapologetically supporting and focusing on African-American Black businesses without, any question, because we're the ones who have been, more greatly disenfranchised. Everybody else gets to benefit from the things that we're able to get. So we're right on point. That's why part of my opening was we must be brave and bold and be willing to shake up the uncomfortableness they have about saying Black. And it is about human dignity. That's all we're asking for, that human dignity is respected among people. We are all part of the human race, the only race that there is. So from a private sector, I call it sometimes quiet money perspective, Mr. Davis, where do you see, because private sector jumped in with all this money, just throwing money at the issue and really the symptoms of the issue and not really knowing what to do with it or how to best employ it. What do you see as the most critical issue for Black businesses being the change that we would like to see, particularly from a private sector? Because this is a collaborative. I think you see the collaboration of the agencies and organizations that are represented in this panel that are necessary in order for us to move the needle. So what's your viewpoint in that regard? Well,
thank you, Gloria. I feel like the person in the meeting where everything that needs to be said has been said, just not everyone said it. And so, but I appreciate that. First of all, let me thank Tammy Hall and her staff for hosting this, as well as the governor for sponsoring and supporting it. Look, what we've said is important so far. Politics and economics are inextricably linked. We know that. What we need to do as Black folks is several things. It's complex. I think Secretary Sanders touched on it. There's been sort of lost a sense of collective consciousness, as I'll call it, where we actually need to band together and understand our issues and help each other. And that's both in politics and economics. I would also say that we need to understand what we want and then demand it. Sometimes we think we know what we want, but I think that there is a deeper understanding that's needed out there in saying, here's what we really need and we're going to demand it. A lot of what I've done, my sermon has been on not access to capital, but controlling the flow of capital. You after access to capital, you're going hand in hand. When you've got a community that controls the flow of capital, that understands the capital needs, that's a different story. And so if you look historically at what we're talking about, it paints a bleak picture. So if you think about 100 years ago, there were 120 Black-owned banks. 20 years ago, there were, 48 Black-owned banks. Today, there are 19 Black-owned banks.
Right, exactly.
So I want you to think about that for me. And it's not because of economies of scale that they were growing. Maybe one of those banks is $1 billion in assets. A bank is the cornerstone of any economy. So you've got banks there. You think about private equity. You think about, there's this program that the government has called the Small Business Investment Corporation. That's sort of been a real bee in my bonnet lately, because there are 305 of these licenses out there, and Black folks hold less than 5. And this is where you can go to the government and get a 2-to-1 match or a 3-to-1 match or whatever the case may be. And it's wonderful for the returns of the investors, but less than 5 Black folks in this country hold one. You move on and you think about credit unions. I look at credit unions and we have what, maybe 54 or so Black-owned credit unions. If you think about community development, financial institutions, they're all over, but I don't know of one maybe that has a national footprint. Maybe there's one or two that somebody can tell me about, but that's an important aspect of what we're talking. So see, I'm not just talking about one flow of capital. I'm talking about the whole system that's out there for us to control the flow of capital for our communities. And so to me, that's the single biggest objective from my seat. Now, there are 3 things that need to happen in order to scale any business. One is that capital, 2 is technical assistance, and 3 is demand for your product. Now, technical assistance, so often we think about technical assistance of, okay, I'm going to tell you how to do your payroll. And in some cases, that's needed, depending on where you are. But in other cases, technical assistance is very sophisticated. In private equity, when someone invests in your business and takes a seat on your board, they're providing you technical assistance, whether you know it or not. Okay. And so when the largest corporations in the country hire McKinsey or Bain or someone else to come in and help them out, that's technical assistance. So we shouldn't think of it as this small thing that is out there for just small businesses. Technical assistance happens everywhere. And then finally is the demand for whatever it is your product is. And I got to tell you, I've worked on policy, federal policy, probably for the last 7 or 8 years. And specifically, there's some things that we did to really focus on Black community and Black business. But what got my attention here was I looked at the disparity study that was done in North Carolina. And my compliments to the secretary and your cabinet and your governor for having that. But when you look at that and you see that of the more than $9 billion spent over a 5-year period, 0.22% of that went to Black businesses, not 2%, not 22%, 0.22%. That's embarrassing and that's inexcusable. And so when you think about the demand for growing businesses, we're all taxpayers. Don't pay your taxes and see what happens. Okay. And so now we've got a state government that controls our tax dollars and controls contracting, but we're expected to pay our taxes, but we only get 0.22% of the business. So that to me is abysmal and appalling, and something where we've got to do something about it. So, you know, when we start to talk about what do we do, look, transparency and accountability are key here. One, we've got to know what's going on. So what's the mechanism that can be used to make sure that there's transparency in the whole process here? Number 2, whose job is it to make sure that this doesn't happen and that we're moving forward? One person needs to turn that light on and off. It doesn't need to be across agencies and everything else. One person needs to be responsible for that. Just one. And whoever it is, we know to go to and hold them accountable for this not occurring. Right now, we don't see that. In North Carolina, maybe some other states or cities have it, but we don't see that here. And so that accountability and transparency, those things are critical for us to move forward. And then we have to measure. You know what gets measured gets done. And so that accountability has to be measured. We have to see measurement there. And so I just think that we miss it sometimes on looking at the big picture when that's the small things that we need to be moving forward here and understanding that we need to hold those political leaders and folks in government. Secretary Sanders, Michelle, I'll say, you know, I love you. We've got to do better. We really have to do better, and whatever help we can give you from the outside, please let us know, because we can't allow this to occur. I'll finish my opening comments here by just saying, look, I look at the economy as just like I look at the human body. And in order to have a fully functioning human body, all my limbs and everything, they really have to be intact and really go. When we've got a portion of our economy, like our body, that's broken, if your arm is broken or your leg is broken, it's not fully functioning. Right now, the Black business community is broken. Mm-hmm. We've got to fix it. And it's up to us. And it's not broken because we don't want to do business. It's broken because we have inherent biases in the process that we need to come together and fix and figure out. So sorry for that long-winded answer to you, Gloria. No, I got to tell you that I'm on my soapbox now. That's
all right. So you sort of brought it full circle of the connection between policy, economics, and people. Because we are the drivers, we are the economics in terms of the revenue spend that we're not leveraging. And so it is an ecosystem, which is what you kind of described. It's an ecosystem, not only overall, but even in the financial space, in the access to capital space, that's an ecosystem. In the governmental space, an ecosystem. With our various businesses, that's an ecosystem. What we now need to do and begin to see is how do we connect all of those ecosystems together, because we're really all one, and different paths and different points of expertise. And so the old saying is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay? That's right. That's real. That's real. That's right. So we start with taking that bite with ourselves. You can't lead others if you're not able to lead yourself. So that leads me into my, the next part of this, and I'll start with you. So what is it that you do in your role to be that change? And taking that bold, brave risk in those opportunities, because it starts with each of us being accountable as well. So I'm gonna ask the other panelists as well, but because each of us as participants and attendees here, we need to begin to think about what is my role in contributing to the ecosystem of well-being for Black Americans.
Can I jump in, because I'm gonna have to drop for an EPA testimony. And we really looked at that as a great question. And it really is about spend. And we look at it from three different vantage points. First, where is the federal government spending its money? And we hold them accountable. Under the Obama administration, we saw that the SBA had a goal of 23% spend with minority firms. The last 4 years, we never saw what the goal was, nor did we ever see what the actual numbers are. That is a perfect place to begin, because we know that the federal government is the largest contractor in the country. They spend more money than anyone else. Secondly is, where is corporate America spending its money? Right. And we know that corporate America usually will give us those answers. Yeah, Ron, we do more if we knew more. And then the third one, as you discussed, is where are Black people spending our dollars? And we all have heard the conversation about Black consumers spend over $1 trillion a year. But that's usually not Black businesses talking about that. That's usually corporate America saying, Black folks spend $1 trillion. How can we market to them to make sure that we get our share of that $1 trillion? And we've got to change that conversation and say, we have $1 trillion of spend power. How can we keep that in our communities to make sure that we have long-term sustainability? And I think that is doable. The second thing I want to talk about in reference to access to capital. And so I truly appreciate Mr. Davis, because usually what happens is we hear this terminology of Black people being financially illiterate. And as Black business owners, I get offended when I hear that, because as a collective community, we're the most educated business group in this country. We have more graduate degrees, more postgraduate degrees than any other business group in the country. And so when they place that on us, that is really a disproportionate conversation. What we don't have is relationships. Mm-hmm. We need to have banking relationships. So I'm an old school guy. Under this last payroll protection plan and EIDL loan, they said, hey, you can go online and apply for a grant and get it sent to your phone. What we need to do as Black people, and I truly appreciate the Black Bankers Association because we partner with them. we need to go make sure that we have relationships with Black-owned banks. We knew that Black-owned banks provide 70% of the loans to Black homeowners and Black businesses. And where we don't have Black banks, we can create our own infrastructure internally within our communities. I'm from Oakland, California. My father was in the Black Panther Party. A lot of people hear about them wearing leather coats and black shotguns, but it was more than that. It was creating family value. It was creating community value. It was creating a community economic system that allowed us to prosper without ever having to go outside of our community. And I'll end with this story. There used to be this myth about white folk ice being colder than ours. And if you're old enough to remember, before we had refrigerators, we had ice boxes. And my grandfather used to deliver ice. And so I had the opportunity to ride with him a couple Saturday mornings. And he would take that ice block and he'd put it in your ice box, and it would keep your meats and vegetables fresh for 7 days. And so every Saturday morning, he would go to his white neighborhood clients first. And we'd put that block of ice in there, and it would last 7 days. But by the time he got to our neighborhoods, that ice had sat on the back of that track all day long. So it had melted down, had gotten chipped away. So by the time it got to our ice boxes, it only lasted 5.5 days. So you see, there was some truth to the myth that white folk ice was colder than ours. But because of a Black man, we created the ice maker. So ain't nobody's ice colder than ours. I can get crushed ice, cubed ice, flavored ice, filtered ice. If I wanted to, I could get colored ice. And when we start seeing our businesses, our communities, our Black organizations in the same vein, we ain't got to worry about what white folk is doing. I don't care about what white communities are doing. I'm going to hold us accountable. I'm going to hold each one of us that's on this call accountable to make sure that when we get off this call, that we don't leave this conversation where it is today. We've got to be intentional about where we spend our money, about the businesses that we go into, and about saying positive things about other Black organizations and Black businesses. I am really excited. But for those of you that are on the call that own a Black-owned business, make sure you get certified so that we can find you, so that we can support your business. Go to byblack.us, buyblack.us. There are Black people around this country right now this morning that are saying, I want to spend more money with Black folk, but I can't find you. We want to make sure that we can provide grants and contract opportunities for you. Let us find you. Let us advocate on your behalf. Let us support you and grow your business, and as well as communities across the country. Thank you so much. I apologize for having to drop off, but I am really excited about the opportunity to be on this call this afternoon and look forward to continue to work with you guys as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Busby, for enriching the conversation and piggybacking on, we each must be accountable in our roles in making this whole process move forward. So we continue to salute you in all of your success and align with you in that as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. So Secretary Saunders, you talked about a variety of things as well. I'm being appreciative of the time, and Mr. Davis also. And I left with you, tell me that one thing that you do to make a difference in being the change that we need in taking that risk.
So when I accepted this appointment as Secretary of Commerce, I said that I would marry innovation and strong leadership to create promising conditions for economic recovery and opportunity. So everything I do as in this role is for just that. And that is not only for Black businesses and for Black people, but for all the residents of this state. But I do have a keen eye and strategies that are focused and intentional for rural North Carolina and for Black people. That's because I understand deeply the challenges, the struggles, the barriers, and the outcomes of being a rural North Carolinian, as well as being a Black and a female in corporate America, in the public sector, and in the day-to-day workplace in everything I do. I get that. And so what is it that I do? I model what I say. And when I am not on point with that, I ask those around me to please call me on that. And I think if it's sitting on the phone, they know that I'm sincere about that. And the other thing that I do is something that I mentioned at the beginning that is not, it is connected, I believe, to this conversation, but I vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I vote as an informed voter for people who support the progression of those who look like me and those who don't look like me. But surely you have to lift Black people up in your work, in your words, in your agenda, and in your actions. And so I say that because, again, it's, you know, a governor has 4 years per term and all that. And every term there's either a different governor that gets that second term. The legislature, they're there, it seems like, for a very long time. I ask everyone to just be attentive to who you vote for and vote up and down the ballot. And then hold yourself accountable. I hold myself accountable for what I say. So I'm doing it through the leadership every day. And we can talk specifics when we have more time. And I'm also accountable, Gloria, to a higher being and a higher calling, because I believe that this work is the work that one is called to do. And I also believe that this work is for people who believe in serving and helping the least of those. And the least of those, you can base it on data, you can base it on your own experience, or you can look around and find out. But I can tell you who are the least of those that I see and experience, whether I'm talking to a company, a family, an individual, a coworker, or anyone. The least of those are people who struggle for access to health care, for good education, for clean water and clean air. And the least of those includes Black businesses who lack the access and the opportunities afforded to them that others have. That's what the least of those is. So I do what I do as a commitment and as a vow to myself about leadership and to a greater, higher being and calling.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Mr. Davis.
Oh, it's hard to follow.
Close it out.
It's hard to follow that. Hard to follow that. Here's what I'll tell you. It's about time, talent, and treasure. When you think about what do you give back. And look, for me, I have had the good fortune to have some really cool jobs in corporate America. Ran $75 billion portfolio for $1 trillion bank, all of the small business and consumer. Been the CEO of the largest Black-owned bank in the history of the country. Done a lot of good things, done a lot of different things, and do okay now. But where I really get my greatest satisfaction is what I do for people who look like me every day and they don't know it. And so when I go to corporate America, I don't go hat in hand. I go for folks who aren't there, who aren't represented, where I don't make a dime and don't get anything out of it. And I can give you a list of companies that way. I'm sure there are folks on this phone who can attest to that and know that. I go engage in policy. When you talk about government, I don't do the Democrat Republican thing. I do whoever's in power, because I need to engage you for the issues that I care about and my folks care about. And so I don't care who it is. I really don't. And so from my perspective, when I think about what I do, I can look in the mirror every night and I can feel okay about my contribution to this whole thing called collective consciousness that I talked about at the very beginning, because my grandfather, you know, way back when, they didn't have a choice. Integration came in and we got a choice. And so somehow we lost that collective consciousness about what we do for each other. And it just doesn't have to be about me making money. Sure, I want to invest in you, and sure, I want to make money, but that's not what it's about at the end of the day. Secretary talked about the higher calling. At the end of the day, the higher calling is, what did you do to help somebody else when there was nothing in it for you? And so that is the important piece. And that, if we all did that, I think that we would move this thing much further, faster. And so that, to me, is my closing remarks and my thanks to everyone. And I appreciate you, Gloria, and I appreciate the Secretary. and Ron for joining us. And Tammy, thank you so much. You're wonderful. We appreciate you.
Well, it has been, I think, based on all that I've seen and heard, an inspiring conversation with some substance. And it starts with each of us individually to hold ourselves accountable to being part of, and here are the tag words that I recorded as we talked. This is about service, everyone. We certainly are in the business to make money, but it is about serving our community for the common good. It is about being intentional about that, strategic, brave, bold, building relationships, accountability, having a collective consciousness. So the last thing that I leave to with everyone is this question for you to think about and act on. What will you do to be the change that you want others to see that benefit the common good, led by a greater power than all of us? And that is where the service comes in, giving back. Thank you so much to all the panelists. This has been a great conversation. I know we're a little bit over time because we started a little late. So Tammy, I will ask if there are any quick questions that we just hot burning. If not, we can collect those and maybe respond back to those later to not further detain everyone. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have this time with this awesome group of panelists and all of the attendees today. Thank you for your leadership, Ms. Hall, and for making the request that I couldn't say no to. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Shealy, for leading us through this dynamic conversation. Secretary Sanders, you're always on point. Mr. Davis, I mean, it has been the collective consciousness of us all. I mean, it has been a terrific morning and afternoon. I know, Sydney, if you're trying to pull up the video real quick, if we can share the video. For those of you in our audience, the exhibit hall opens after we close out. It is my desire that there are some staffing those exhibit halls that will be able to interact with you. But there is a video that we wanted to share as we close us out today around, you know, intentionality. That has been the common buzzword here. And for our 3-4 years we have left here, Secretary Sanders, you know, the governor has been very adamant that, you know, we must be intentional. The disparity study shows us where we need to make changes. And we know, along with all of our minority businesses, but our Black-owned businesses in particular, we need to make some changes. And so I want to hold myself accountable. I hold all of us accountable. We all play a valuable role in making sure that we make changes to inequities that have existed, not just during the pandemic. The pandemic certainly shined a brighter light, but it has existed for decades. And we're here now. The time is now. And the time is right for us to cause some good trouble. And I think we're all, you know, we're all up for the challenge. Sydney, I see we're trying to bring up the video. If you're ready, let's hit play and let's roll it.
Black people's sordid past with and as property stretches back to at least 1863, when 4 million slaves were emancipated and today's equivalent of $48 billion in assets evaporated from the balance sheets of Southern planters and the banks that counted enslaved people as collateral. Since then, the restraints on Black economic mobility have grown more subtle, but no less effective. The Wilmington insurrection and the Tulsa massacre cost 500+ Black lives, and today's equivalent of $250 million in Black wealth. The persistent impact of redlining has cost Black families billions in wealth, despite being outlawed in 1968. The foreclosure crisis cut Black household wealth in half. And then there's COVID, which beyond the human toll, closed 41% of Black businesses in 2020. Events like these, compounded by the structural headwinds of Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and the Black-white appraisal gap, explain why white household wealth is 10 times Black wealth, and why median Black wealth is forecast to fall to 0 by 2053, unless there's a fundamental shift in the way Black wealth is created and sustained. However, as the saying goes, pressure makes diamonds. And the journey of Black ownership and wealth in America has yielded one of history's most entrepreneurial people. The Black American is uniquely entrepreneurial, with a 50% higher likelihood of starting a business than the average American. As we chart the course of our recovery, realizing the promise of Black entrepreneurship represents one of our best opportunities to rev the engine of economic growth for all communities. With this in mind, the Black Business Forum and its allies encourage policymakers, funders, and partners to invest in Black business ecosystems at scale. Instead of debt that weighs Black businesses down, we must provide equity-like capital that propels them forward. Equitable access to public contracts and private sector supply chains, and the right advice at the right time are mandatory to ensure that the 41% of Black businesses that went away during COVID not only return, not only thrive, but drive this new economy.
Okay, thank you so much. I tell you, I'm just overjoyed, and certainly, you know, the conversation is that there is a higher calling on all of us to do what's right, and the time is now right. I am most thankful for our partners, Rezeal NC, Partners in Equity, Napoleon Wallace, your whole team. This has been just something that I have really enjoyed doing. We've not held a Black Business Forum before, so this is our first one. And I can tell you we had a great response. And for those that may have missed some of our segments, the segments will be available on the Hoover platform for at least 60 days. So you can go back and watch, and I will definitely monitor and see our traffic that hits. But let's leave here today being intentional. Let's be deliberate in the actions that we take. And this will not be our last conversation. We will have many more conversations. And so as we go into the weekend and continue to celebrate Juneteenth, let's all leave on a high, and let's go out into the world, and let's all be great. We know we can. Thank you for attending. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.